What up, Ben?
Hey, how's it going, Jess?
Good. I love that this is the first time we're meeting and we get to do it here on live on a Zoom stream.
Yeah,
Luke has introduced me to some of the things that you've been doing out in the space, and I was just like, oh my God, there's some things. I'm really, really excited just to jump into a conversation with you, and I'm going to be very selfish, quite frankly, and lead a conversation in a way that's going to be interesting for myself, hopefully, and
sure.
I guess hopefully interesting for other people as well. So I want to start off with some quick introductions. I'll go first. I'll turn it over to you, and then we can get into some things. But I also feel like I need to just acknowledge we were just both backstage waiting, jumping in on that last session there, and the intensity of the you get a car, you get a pack. That was quite. It was. I like the energy that I think has been shared with the crowd here. So I think we're going to shift gears a little bit. I don't have anything to give away. Don't think you have anything to give away. So maybe we should acknowledge
Not the
that
moment.
early on. Okay,
Sure,
just wisdom, insight,
sure.
and sort of a tie into, yeah, I think somebody's obviously got a lot of experience in building in this cool NFT space. So first introduction for myself, my name is Jess. I run an organization called Seed Club. Seed Club is a DAO that builds and invests in communities with tokens. So we play around in the NFTs, social token space, and are just really infatuated with this idea of how tokens give communities superpowers on the internet. And the idea of being able to own a part of a community, I think, is just amazing and unlocking a whole lot of new value for creators in the space. So I think we have a lot of alignments or points of alignment here. But yeah, we'd love to hear how you introduce yourself these days.
Sure. Well, yeah, it's tough. I guess the last 6 months to a year has been diving into the NFT space pretty heavy. Created my first project. I had some one-of-ones, but then created my first project called Evolution, which launched on Flow and sold out within like 7 minutes, and it's been kind of a crazy ride supporting that and working, like going back and forth with collectors and building community, and um, pretty intense first half of the year. But I've worked previously, over a decade working in games and films on like the Hobbit movies, Elysium, Chappie, ton of Call of Duties, Metal Gear Solid movie, Valerian. Most recently, have been working on Halo Infinite, which has been really fun the last couple of years, and in the middle of planning future evolution stuff, and one other big new thing that will hopefully be coming out pretty soon as well.
I like the tease. So I mean, concept artist, I think, is what the title you've used, at least with
Yeah,
is that the best way
concept
to describe what you've
artist,
done?
concept designer, a few different terms like that. But yeah,
So
concept designer, yeah.
so you're an artist who envisions
Mhm.
worlds and characters, and I'm super curious, like what is that process like for you? Like, are you doing drugs and running off into the
Yeah,
woods and coming up with crazy ideas, or what?
yeah. It's basically like coming up with, like, usually like in films, it's probably even harder where it's like you just get a script with a bunch of words and it's like, I need what does this look like? Here's so much of words, figure this out. And it's like, okay, it's this alien species on this kind of planet. What would they look like based on the environment? What kind of tools would they have? Would there be enemies and creatures? And like, it's just, yeah, world building from the ground up has basically been my job most of my career. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder. Sometimes it's like established and it's like, we just need this one cool weapon or vehicle in this thing that's already established. But most of my experience has been, yeah, like starting from nothing and building, allowing this giant tree of a franchise to grow, um, step by step, which is, it's a lot of work, but it's really fun. And that's why when the NFT stuff happened, it's like, hey, I know how to do this.
Yeah,
I've been
I want
doing
to
this
dive
for a
into
while.
I want to dive into that in a bit, but I thought I think there's sort of also an interesting thread to pull here of like you being an established artist in in a digital artist too, right? I'm assuming much of your work is digital, at least in
Yeah.
production, and then this transition into like it seems as if you came into the NFT space, at a good time, but also fairly early, I guess, in this latest run
Yeah.
up. And so I'm really curious as to what was that experience like for you? Like, what was the aha moment that made you want to, or if there was one? And this idea of sort of like migrating as a more traditional digital artist into NFTs and crypto.
Well, I've always been kind of had my toe into cryptocurrencies, since like maybe 2016, 2017, the last like bull run that happened. So I kind of dove into like on the investing side and like figuring everything out. So I kind of was familiar with all of this, but I wasn't aware that there was any like art component to it at that time. Even though I guess CryptoPunks and maybe CryptoKitties were kind of happening then. I vaguely remember like news that Ethereum was like broken one day because CryptoKitty people are trading these cats on Ethereum. I was like, I remember that, but I just didn't look into it at the time. But so the end of last year when this started happening, and I was like, something's happening here. And I started reading into it. And once I figured out what it was, I was like, that, like, all the issues and problems I had as an artist, a digital artist up till now, it was like, this solves all those problems for us. So for me, it was just like, once you read exactly what it is and what it's doing, it just solves so many problems that we've had that has been holding us as digital artists back. So for me, it was just like, this is like what Bitcoin did for money, this does for art kind of thing. It's just like, this is it. Like, I got to be a part of this. So I just kind of dove in at that point.
Did you find your existing community was like, were they the biggest part of your collector base, and were they prime ready, excited for these things, or did you sort of bring a lot of that credibility that you've built up in your career, but were more interacting with a crypto native collector base?
I think my existing audience has nothing to do with the current audience that is buying. Like, that was another interesting thing that kind of happened. Like, there was some kind of maybe negativity or backlash that happened to certain people because they built up an audience that aren't the collectors or buyers. So all these people that they have built up an audience with that like their art, for some reason really hated NFTs. So like, they were getting a lot of hate and negativity. Whereas I guess for me, I don't know, for whatever reason that didn't happen, but it's just like, I knew who the audience was that were the buyers, and I just focused my attention on those people and starting to build that audience in the people who are interested in this stuff, I guess, and just kind of focus on that. Because they do seem to be quite separate audiences.
Interesting. So like, there's one of the interesting things I think about crypto is it's so, like, there's so much value in leading. Timing obviously matters quite a bit. But like the way that maybe one artist comes into the space isn't necessarily going to work for the next, and
Sure.
you see that with token distributions and with new project ideas. So, like, what are my guess is that there are many people that look up to you and what you've done in the space. And I'm curious what the advice you give to new creators that are maybe looking at the crypto specific angle of saying, hey, NFTs, collectibles, I want to be a part of this world. I like being a digital creator. Don't want to have to deal with the problems you dealt with, would rather just skip that and jump into to this digital space.
That's honestly one of the coolest things. Like, some people could look at it negatively, but for me, if the younger artists coming up don't have to like get chewed up by an industry for 10 years and they can just skip to the meat grinder and just like be successful and make personal art, and like, I think that's just beautiful. Like, that's like just a beautiful thing to me. And just like, they can just skip the negativity and go have a great positive art career and just like off to the races. I mean, and it's happening. There's like teenagers that are like making a bunch of money, like with their own art, with their own voice. Like, I think that's beautiful. As far as like people who maybe have done what I've done and like they worked for another industry for a long time and are like, how do I do this? I think investing time, most of my career, I've been investing time in myself. Like, there's a lot of possibilities of like working on a movie for like multiple years and then it gets canceled and you basically have years of art you can't show. And if you do show it, you'll get in trouble, or some people look on that poorly if you went to apply, even if it wasn't online. So we kind of get put in this weird situation where we could potentially have sunk years of our lives into a project and not have anything to show for it and be kind of stuck and not be able to get a job. So for me, I always try to invest in myself and like personal art. So over the years, I had quite a bit of personal art that I could draw from immediately once kind of that NFT moment happened. I was just like, I have a bunch of cool original stuff that I own, whereas maybe a lot of friends focused 100% of their attention on the movie or whatever they were working on. And now they basically have to start from zero. Like, what is my voice? Like, what do I want to say? All my time has been like for the client, and I haven't really thought much for myself. So I think if you haven't invested in yourself, I think now would be the time to seriously start like breaking out time each night and thinking about who you are, what you want to say, what kind of work you want to create, create an interesting idea or like visual language that can make for an interesting series of art. I guess I'm always thinking about like thinking of things in sets or a collection, I guess. Like here's all this warfare, futuristic warfare things. This could be an interesting collection of work, and I will make sure that's specific to one website. Or here's all this creatures that I turn into a project and it's only going to be on this website. Here's this and it's only going to be there. I try to think of things very distinctly, so it's not just like the same art on a million websites. I try to really like distill these flavors into different experiences. And a lot of it is just.
Oh, sorry. I think the idea of investing yourself in that angle is really, really interesting, right? And I thought where you're going to go with it was sort of in the investing in building an audience or a community.
That as well.
And I hadn't. Yeah. So yeah, but I think like I hadn't imagined like, of course, if you're on contract for folks, you would have to make you cry a little bit with the amount of work that you have locked away in vaults.
Yeah,
I don't want to bring it up if it's sensitive.
No, I mean for most of us too, like probably 99% of our work can't be shown, right? Like
wow.
I have thousands and thousands of, designs for different video games that I will never be able to show. Maybe if I retire and don't care anymore, but it's like most of our work is just like stuck in a hard drive covered, under NDA. So like investing in ourselves is always a smart, long-term strategy, I think.
So, and how did you like, what's the community angle there? Because I think like, it's interesting, like how you're thinking about collections and stuff, but like where have you been the most successful at building community around your art?
I mean, most of it has been like making sure I have a following over the years. So people for events like this, right? Like you never know what's going to happen. Like, so once this did happen, I had a decent enough following and all this stuff to hopefully when collectors like, who is this person? It's like, okay, it's a legitimate artist. It's not someone who just made an account yesterday, which is something that happens, right? Like a lot of friends who are like really amazing artists, but they're just like, screw social media. I don't care. And now that they're wanting to do this and they're making accounts, it's just like, if a collector came in and checked out like, oh, this is great art. Who is this? Oh, it's like a new account. They have 2 followers. I don't know if this is a smart investment. Like a lot of it's just like multi-year thinking of just like being a part of whatever's happening, even if maybe running a social media account it is a job, but it's something that you kind of have to do to keep your brand as a thing. But for evolution, Discord I think is huge. I mean, I used Discord for a number of years just like to hang out with friends or play video games, but it's been really cool to see how that's become like the hub for communities the last few years, especially for NFTs. It's its own thing. I think for me, initially I was very active, but now I'm trying to like, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like I want there to be a really strong community, but then I feel like collectors really want the best art too. So it's like, I want to make sure the art is the best, but if I'm making art that I'm not really like super active, and it's just like, I swear if I'm not saying anything, it's just, I'm very busy trying to make cool stuff for you guys. But like, it's always that balance or just finding a good team to like do that side of it to keep the community going while I have the time to make the coolest art possible for the people that are supporting me.
I think that's such an interesting sort of challenge. Like one of the things I often describe is like this idea of the difference between like say Web 2 and Web 3 creation. And Web 2, like we're trying to build an audience and once we hit a certain threshold, we get to sell out. So I get to sell out advertising, or maybe I'll sell the community or whatever, right? We're trying to get to that critical mass. Whereas in like Web 3, we get to build and sell with our community. The community as collectors, and they are building secondary markets, and they're helping tell a story, etc. So I'm wondering if you have thoughts on how like the relationship between fans and artists is changing as we sort of really move into more Web3 native experiences.
To me, this is one of the great things as well, because like, again, I'm a bit more of an introspective person. I just like to like keep my head down and like make the coolest thing possible. And Web 2.0, you kind of couldn't do that, right? You had to become like some YouTube personality or basically running your own media show so that, eventually you get like 1 million views on your video and you can make like whatever in YouTube ad money. And it's like you're stuck in this endless loop of like trying to get attention. And that's just like, doesn't really, I can do it if I have to, but it's not really like a great fit for who I am or my personality. So I did it enough to make sure like people knew I existed, but like I couldn't, it didn't feel right for me to dive into the Web 2.0 model. And then Web 3.0 is just like, wait, I can now make this cool thing and sell it directly to people who love that cool thing. And I don't need to do this big like dog and pony show and create like millions of videos every day to like keep attention on whatever product I'm hopefully selling or advertising revenue I need to get. I feel like that is like the more pure thing to me. Like it's just cuts out the middleman. We don't need the YouTube. We can just sell directly to the people who love our work. And again, it's just, it's cutting out that meat grinder experience that was in the Web 2.0 or the previous generation. And that's just a beautiful thing to me. Yeah.
So do you think it has like an impact on the art you create, or like, I mean, I guess I think the answer is maybe pretty obvious. If not in a meat grinder, you will probably create better art. But is there other ways that it sort of has an impact on what you make?
I think so too. Like the Web 2.0, right? Like you need as much attention as possible. So in order to get as much attention, the best way to do that is to tap into existing audiences, which ends up leading to just doing fan art. So like, okay, my video of this painting this original robot might get 5,000 views, but if I painted Spider-Man, I'd probably get 10 million views. And then you're basically stuck illustrating other people's ideas. You're not growing yourself as a creator. You're not growing yourself as a like original thinker. You're basically getting good at illustrating other people's ideas in interesting ways, which is a skill in itself. But if you want to get good at building universes and building your own IPs and franchises, that's like kind of getting sidetracked into trying to get as much attention as possible, which now I feel in Web 3.0, I mean, you still can, right? I mean, it's kind of happening now where it's like, oh, I'll do some, this avatar project popular. I'll do some art that has pieces of that avatar project to get more collector attention. And so, I mean, that's always going to be there, but I feel like now, if you want to focus solely on creating your own original universes, you can make a very good living doing that without needing to go into like fan art territory or something else just to get attention. I don't feel like that's needed as much if you don't want to.
I think that's interesting. Like the biggest benefit in my mind around Web 2 is like this democratization of distribution, right? Like we can all have reach potentially, but maybe like the less optimistic version of that was like, actually it's going to be vicious competition for that scarce attention, and you just need to be running this treadmill all the time. And I often wonder if in sort of this Web3, we can still get, maybe you still have that treadmill is still a part of the game, but if we think of it as like an attention funnel, those people who come through and really love what you do are so much more valuable to the world that you're building, the business you're building. And I think that's, I don't know, it takes away a lot of stress in my mind as I think about building an audience in the space. And I can only imagine as somebody who's a creative, the impact that would have on the type of work you create. I want to very selfishly dive into something around this idea of world building, but I have a note here. I read a lot about Dows. I talk a lot about Dows. Some people may accuse me of being a DAO thought leader, though I would not go quite that far. I think Luke's laughing right now. But I'm curious, are DAOs on your radar, or is this something that you'd ever thought about around your work and collectors?
Sort of. Like the idea of social tokens, maybe you could explain it better. I think I have a general idea about DAOs, but like if you have like a use case where you're like, this is a good example of how this has worked.
Sure. I mean, I think there's a variety of experiments that are out there, but I think the maybe the most relevant one right now are ones like Flamingo DAO or Squiggle DAO, which are collector DAOs, where like so much of the value is recognizing that the value in NFTs are very much around the collector base and the social capital that sort of supports the narrative and the value of a piece of digital art. And so DAOs in many ways are formalizing this with either an investment thesis or a community thesis. And so I could see like and in fact, one of the projects we work on is called Song Camp, and Song Camp creates music with friends, like essentially brings people together to create music together. And then their latest camp, they're designing worlds, right? And so there's this world of
Cool.
Electro, which is a DAO that is this world where music is just sort of, I guess, inherent to the values in existence there, but have been lost over the centuries, and sort of this experience of exploring that. And so I think it's sort of like this interesting dynamic where you add ownership and decision making and collective value creation, where a token kind of captures all of those pieces. So for like the world building piece, which is what actually I want to dive into next year with you, is like curious if yeah, well, I guess more so if you had thought about it, but if there's any ideas that come up
Yeah, I
that way.
mean, because there's a lot of things that I want to do for collectors, and right now it's like I'm having to do it manually, which is a lot of extra legwork. So if there's like everyone just gets like a social token, and it's like I can press a button and, oh, I want everyone to get this cool new piece of art, and I can just like, it's just like built into that, like that would be super cool. Yeah, because right now it's like yeah, a lot of that has to be done manually at the moment.
We're seeing sort of like the development of these fan clubs that sort of, so we're a creator, so a musician say has their brand and themselves. They also usually have fans. So Taylor Swift, example I love to
Sure.
use. She's not doing a project with us, but like, come on, Taylor Swifties, let's go. This will be fun. But the Taylor Swift fan club, like I think this idea of a fan club with a token, and where Taylor Swift maybe is donating an NFT to the community on a regular basis, that could go on to sort of fund some of the action there. So I think there's something. I think many artists and creators will sort of really see a ton of value in formalizing their community in a situation like that, because there's all of a sudden a real incentive and alignment in supporting your art.
Yeah, that's really like, ideally that makes, like, I've been thinking about it. I just wasn't sure the best way to implement it, or like, say I have one project that's on Flow and another project that's on, maybe it's on Ethereum. Like if
Yeah.
there's like a centralized thing, like that would be super cool. That's like, regardless of that, like, hey, I'm launching this new thing on this other chain, but I want to reward all my collectors on this other thing. If there's something that's just apart from
Living your
that, that would
multi-chain
be
life.
super cool, because it's like, again, I have to do it all manual. Like, hey, can I get everyone's wallet
Yeah.
on this other chain, even though you bought this thing on the other thing? And yeah,
That's
it would
interesting.
help.
Yeah. Okay. I have thoughts there for you, but I don't want to get stuck in a nerdy like DAO building conversation here. Though maybe you guys can invite me back for another one of those at some point. This idea of world building, I think, is just so, like, it just is so obvious sitting here that your skill in world building would just translate over into this world of NFTs. Like, essentially, the like the to me, like the narratives and the art and like the story arc, or like this feeling of being a part of something, is so key. And in many like these avatar projects, I think, and even in like CryptoPunks, that is really what I think is like the compelling piece here. It's less the art, in my opinion, and more like the sense of belonging and social signaling, and
Yeah.
then and community maybe more deeply. So like, I'm imagining that there are people out in the audience today that are either looking for either things to be a part of, or maybe launching their own project in the future. So I'm wondering if you can take me back to take me to day zero. You are about to go build a world. What does that even look like, and how are you, like, to me it just seems like this overwhelming thing to go from I'm going to go build a world to building a world. And I wonder if you can add a little bit of color to how that might be done, or how you do it maybe.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time, like working on movies and games, it's easier because there's like a director or a writer who it's like, okay, we bought the rights to Lord of the Rings. Here, we're doing The Hobbit now. There's all this stuff that was created for our Lord of the Rings. We need to make, say, like I worked on the wargs in the Hobbit movies, and there was wargs in Lord of the Rings, but now the director Peter Jackson wants a different looking warg, and it's like, okay, what would you like it to look like? And it's like taking notes, and so there's a lot to draw from sometimes, where it's like filling in the blanks of something that exists. But a lot of times, if you're starting from scratch, a lot of it's just like answering questions or questioning things, coming up with questions, and then figuring out the answers to those questions. Uh, like I want to build a world. It's like, okay, what kind of world? A sci-fi world, a fantasy world, stylized world. pixel world, like you start like narrowing the target down, like, okay, I want a pixel world that kind of is influenced by Zelda, that takes place on a fire environment and lava, or it's a desert. And this starts narrowing down your target. And then it's like, okay, if it's the desert, then maybe everyone is living in tents and they have camel type alien creatures that they use to get around and store water. And you start like, again, starts narrowing down the thing you're trying to create. What's the use case? Is this like a card series? Is this just avatars of characters that can live in this environment? Is it a video game? Is it, and then it narrows it down further of like, okay, if it's a video game, I need this and that. And then I could start divvying up. You're basically becoming like a project manager for yourself. Like, okay, that means I need 80 characters and I need them to do this and I need this functionality and maybe I got to use Unreal Engine or whatever to make this thing.
Yeah, I just love that answer of like asking questions, actually, because I think it's like there's just like so, yeah, obviously a potential of overwhelm in any creative experience, but then there's so much freedom even in at every level as far as being super creative and yet you feel like you're making momentum towards an endpoint.
Yeah, and it helps breaking it down like that too, so it isn't overwhelming, right? Like, I think someone asked James Cameron something like that, and he said like something similar. Like, I think I learned when I was like getting overwhelmed, I read stuff like that where it's like, because he works on like some of the biggest movies ever made, and it's just like I break down the tasks into smaller daily chunks. So or like mowing one strip of the lawn at a time. Like, don't, if you do each one, eventually the lawn will get mowed. But if you look at the whole lawn, that's like 10 acres, you're going to get overwhelmed and kind of freak out. But it's like, today I'm just mowing this one thing, and that's all I got to think about. But in the back of your mind, you've planned out everything you got to do, but it's just like, today it's just this one thing. And it helps keep it achievable. Yeah.
I just like that there's going to be like, there are literally people right now who are like, they're doodling in class, maybe not the second, but doodling in class, and their teacher's going to say like, what do you want to be? And they're going to be forced themselves to answer like, I don't know, like banker or something like that. And deep in their mind, they're like, actually, I just want to be a world builder. And now this is like a very not only legitimate, but probably extremely lucrative if done well, sort of role. So I'm recognizing this is a big countdown clock here, right? We have a minute left here. And so I want to, I guess you sort of hinted earlier that you're working on something new. Are you able to sort of share a little bit about what you're working on?
No, I can't really say, but it's coming pretty soon, maybe within the next month or so. But I think people will dig it.
Guys, I tried for you. I tried to get that alpha. I tried to be super subtle about it too. He's good.
But I'm also still building and supporting cool stuff for Evolution as well. So it's like, ideally, I'll just have these two big things that I'm going back and forth on. But the next big thing, it's like King Kong's out the door, but Godzilla's coming. So like, get ready. And then there'll be these two things that
they're going to battle
for a long time.
Okay, cool. So if people want to sort of stay up to date with what you're working on, where can they find you?
Probably Twitter might be a good place. Ben Mauro Art at Twitter, and my Instagram. I'm not sure the exact wording of that one, but yeah,
you'll find them on Twitter.
Evolution Discord.
Okay.
Yeah,
it sounds like a lot of the fun's happening in the Evolution Discord. So if you hadn't had a poke around that project, it's absolutely phenomenal. So I encourage you to go check out this world that Ben's been building. If you're more interested in, I would love to chat with you more about Dows at some point, Ben. So
sure,
hit me up on the Twitter if you want to do that. And for folks that are listening, we have a lot of fun stuff kicking off in the Seed Club Discord. So Seed Club HQ on Twitter is where you can find us. And I'm that tall guy. Look at us right to the last minute. Thank you, Ben. What a wonderful conversation. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, you too. And thanks for watching, guys.